The galaxy had long underestimated humanity. Most alien species saw humans as unpredictable and volatile, a species that could never truly be trusted. Despite their technological achievements and their undeniable presence in the stars, humans were often considered reckless and ill-prepared for the complexities of galactic diplomacy. Most aliens regarded them as a nuisance or a curiosity at best, dangerous but not particularly competent when it came to serious matters of intergalactic politics. That was until the day a plea for help arrived. The Xathar, a species of towering insectoid beings with their sleek, biomechanical bodies and a reputation for being peaceful, had once been a dominant force in their region of the galaxy. Their home planet, Xathar Prime, was a lush, verdant world filled with sprawling forests and crystal-clear lakes, a paradise in many ways and a symbol of their peaceful nature. The Xathar were brilliant, their technology far more advanced than humanity's, and their understanding of the cosmos profound. They had no enemies, or so they thought. For decades, the Xathar had lived in peace, their enemies were few, and they had forged solid, long-lasting alliances with other alien races. But all that changed when the Korrakh hordes descended upon their world. The Korrakh were ruthless, savage, and unrelenting, a race of beings that thrived on chaos and destruction. Their empire was built on conquest, and the Xathar were their next target. The Korrakh had no qualms about the way they waged war. Their weapons were brutal, and their strategy was simple: annihilate everything in their path. When they set their sights on Xathar Prime, the Xathar resistance was unprepared for the scale of destruction that followed. The Korrakh struck without warning. Their warships blotted out the sky, and their soldiers, heavily armored and brutal in their combat tactics, descended upon the planet. The Xathar tried to mount a defense, but their forces were too few, too spread out, and their technologies too focused on peaceful purposes to effectively combat the savage nature of the Korrakh. Within days, Xathar Prime's planetary defense systems were destroyed, and the Xathar cities that had once gleamed under their twin suns were reduced to rubble. The peaceful race found themselves cornered, with no real hope for survival. It was then that the Xathar did something that no other alien species had ever done before they reached out to humanity for help. Their message was a desperate one, crackling across the stars, their voices tinged with both fear and hope. "We are dying," the message said, "and only your Deathworlders can save us." The term Deathworlders had been coined by other species to describe humans. Their resilience and willingness to fight even in the harshest conditions made them unlike any other species in the galaxy. Humans were survivors, born of a planet that had tried to kill them at every turn. From violent storms and freezing tundras to deadly predators and hostile ecosystems, Earth was a world that forced its inhabitants to fight for every inch of survival. While other races preferred diplomacy and peaceful resolutions, humans had learned to thrive in environments where survival was a daily battle, and they had developed the military prowess to match. The Xathar, in their desperation, realized that only a species like humanity could stand against the Korrakh. No one else could withstand the brutal nature of the war they were waging. With their message sent, they could only wait, hoping against hope that humanity would answer the call. When the message reached Earth, the response was immediate. The leadership of the United Earth Federation, though initially cautious and uncertain, understood the weight of the request. The galaxy's fate was no longer in the hands of the peaceful races, but in the hands of the most unpredictable species in the universe. The decision to help was made, but the cost would be high. Humanity's Deathworlder Fleet, a group of warriors who had survived the harshest conditions known to any species, would lead the charge. The Xathar had no idea what they were about to unleash. The moment the message reached Earth, it sent a ripple through the corridors of power. The leaders of the United Earth Federation were not quick to act. For centuries, humans had kept to their own, watching from the sidelines as the galaxy's great powers waged war and settled disputes. Humans had their own problems to deal with, wars of their own, and had developed a strong aversion to meddling in the affairs of other species. But this was different. The Xathar had sent a direct plea, and for the first time in history, humanity was being asked not to be passive observers but to intervene. The Federation Council convened an emergency meeting in the sprawling complex of Earth's Central Command, located in the heart of Geneva. The building was a marvel of human engineering, with its towering spires of steel and glass reaching into the sky, symbolic of humanity's reach into the stars. Inside, representatives from every major human faction filled the meeting rooms, each person bringing their own perspective and agenda to the table. The stakes were high. Earth had never been this close to involving itself in a galactic conflict of this scale. Admiral Katya Ivanova, the seasoned military leader who had served in the most brutal campaigns of humanity's past, was the first to speak. Her face was stern, the deep lines around her eyes betraying the years of combat and strategy. She addressed the council with a calm but firm voice. The message is clear: the Xathar are in dire need of assistance. We are their last hope. If we don't act now, they will be wiped out by the Korrakh. Her words were met with murmurs of agreement, but there were those who hesitated. Senator Marcus Rowe, a hardline politician known for his caution and his skepticism of extraterrestrial involvement, leaned forward, his expression grim. And what do we get in return, Admiral? What's the true cost of this rescue? We have no idea who the Korrakh are or what they might do next. What guarantee do we have that this won't lead to something worse? We're talking about the entire Xathar race, their planet, and their technology. All of it could be caught in the crossfire of a galactic war. We can't afford that kind of risk. The room grew tense. Rowe's words struck a chord with those who valued Earth's independence and survival above all else. They had fought their own battles, bled for their own soil, and many were not ready to throw that away for a species they knew little about. But Ivanova was undeterred. This isn't just about the Xathar. The Korrakh are a growing threat, and if we don't intervene, they'll only become stronger. We have the fleet, the technology, and the Deathworlder forces that can make the difference. If we don't act now, we risk losing more than one world. We risk losing everything. Her words hit home. The human military had long prided itself on its ability to adapt, to survive in conditions that would break lesser species. The Deathworlder forces were humanity's most formidable asset, soldiers honed in the most unforgiving environments known to any species. They were the ones who had fought on Earth's harshest landscapes, surviving extreme heat, freezing cold, and deadly wildlife, only to come out stronger and more determined. There was no mission they could not tackle. Humanity's Deathworlders had never backed down, not once. But the Xathar were not Earth's allies. The Federation was well aware that involving themselves in this conflict could have far-reaching consequences, but the threat of the Korrakh was undeniable. If the Korrakh succeeded in wiping out the Xathar, it would send a signal to the rest of the galaxy, a signal that humanity could no longer ignore. The Korrakh would not stop there. They would continue to spread, conquer, and enslave. After hours of heated debate, the decision was made. The fleet would be mobilized. The Deathworlders would be called into action. Despite their concerns, the Federation had no choice but to act. If they were to protect Earth and its future, they needed to ensure that the Korrakh's reign of terror would be stopped at all costs. Admiral Ivanova, knowing the weight of her command, was already preparing the fleet. It was a costly decision, but it was one she believed was necessary for the survival of humanity. The Deathworlders would march into the fray, as they always did against impossible odds, in the name of something greater than themselves. The galaxy would soon learn the price of underestimating humanity. The call had been answered. The Deathworlder Fleet was ready to deliver. The Deathworlder Fleet was unlike any other military force in the galaxy. To most alien races, space fleets were sleek, technologically advanced ships designed for efficiency and precision, but the fleet humanity had assembled for this mission was far from conventional. It was an amalgamation of ingenuity, raw power, and a deep-rooted will to survive. The fleet was made up of a variety of ships, all designed with one goal in mind: combat in the most extreme environments. These were not the polished, gleaming warships that adorned the fleets of other advanced civilizations. They were rough, heavily modified vessels that had seen countless battles. Some of the ships had been salvaged from wrecks, stripped of everything unnecessary, and reinforced with scrap metal, while others had been built from the ground up in the harshest environments on Earth, planets where only the toughest survived. These were ships that had been tested against the unforgiving conditions of human Deathworld's planets that had once been thought to be uninhabitable, their ecosystems too hostile for any living being to thrive. Each ship in the fleet had a different origin. Some were born in the inferno of Earth's volcanic regions, their hulls made from materials that could withstand the molten lava and shifting tectonic plates. Others had been constructed in the frozen tundras of Earth's poles, where the cold could freeze a person in seconds, but where humanity had learned to survive and adapt. There were even ships that had been forged in the jungles and deserts of Earth, environments where predators roamed freely, and humanity had learned to fight tooth and nail to carve out a place for themselves. At the helm of the fleet was Admiral Katya Ivanova, a seasoned veteran of countless conflicts. Ivanova was not the type of leader who relied on elegant strategies or calculated diplomacy. She was a leader forged in the crucible of war, a woman who had earned her reputation through blood and sweat. Her hands had guided humanity's fleet through more than one desperate battle, and her resolve had always been unwavering. Under her command, the Deathworlder Fleet had become a force to be reckoned with. The fleet's flagship, the Iron Tempest, was a hulking behemoth vastly larger than most ships in the galaxy, with a design that prioritized durability over aesthetics. Its hull was jagged, designed to absorb blows rather than deflect them. Its weapons were formidable, with massive railguns capable of tearing through enemy ships with brutal efficiency. The ship's engines were fueled by the very heart of Earth's molten core, a power source that no other species could replicate. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, a ship that could weather the most hostile environments, whether in the depths of space or on the surface of a Deathworld. Alongside the Iron Tempest was a series of smaller warships, each with its own unique strengths. Some were fast, designed for hit-and-run tactics, others were heavily armored, built to take and dish out punishment. The fleet was a balanced force, capable of responding to any threat the Korrakh might throw at them. But the true power of the fleet lay in its Deathworlder soldiers, the elite warriors who would lead the charge on Xathar Prime. These soldiers were not ordinary humans. They were veterans of Earth's harshest environments, having fought in wars across the galaxy, trained to survive and fight in most extreme conditions. They were specialists, men and women who had honed their skills in the unforgiving wilderness of Earth's Deathworlds, each of them a walking testament to humanity's will to survive. General Valeria Cortez was among the most feared of these warriors. Having survived countless battles on Earth's most dangerous front lines, Cortez was a living legend. Her reputation for ruthlessness and strategic brilliance had made her one of the most respected commanders in the human military. She was the one chosen to lead the ground forces in the coming battle, and she knew that the Xathar's fate was now tied to her ability to command. As the fleet readied itself for the journey, there was an unspoken understanding among the soldiers. This mission was more than just a battle. It was a statement to the galaxy. Humanity had always been underestimated, its capabilities overlooked. But now, the Deathworlder Fleet was ready to show the universe that no one, no matter how powerful, could stand against them when they decided to fight. The call for help had been made, and humanity was answering. The fleet, with its seasoned warriors and battle-hardened ships, would deliver. The galaxy would soon learn that when the Korrakh came for their prey, it was humanity who would stand between them and total annihilation. As the Deathworlder Fleet descended into Xathar Prime's atmosphere, the sight was breathtaking. The planet below was a beautiful world, full of verdant jungles and sprawling, crystalline lakes, its surface a stark contrast to the war that had consumed it. The once pristine world was now scarred by the Korrakh invasion. Smoke billowed from burning cities, and the air carried the acrid scent of destruction. The Xathar had done their best to defend their planet, but against the overwhelming might of the Korrakh, they had been losing. Humanity's fleet, vast and imposing, entered the planet's orbit, casting an ominous shadow across the war-torn landscape below. Admiral Ivanova watched the planet from the command deck of the Iron Tempest, her eyes narrowed in focus. The Xathar had warned them about the ferocity of the Korrakh forces, but seeing it firsthand was a stark reminder of the stakes at play. The Korrakh had no mercy, they wanted only destruction. The Xathar's once beautiful cities were now crumbling ruins, the remains of their defenses scattered across the surface. "Admiral, we've received new intel," said Commander Richter, a seasoned officer at Ivanova's side. "The Korrakh have pushed deeper into the Xathar capital. Their forces are consolidating around the central city. If we don't act now, they'll destroy everything." The urgency in Richter's voice was palpable. Ivanova didn't need to be told twice. She gave a sharp nod and turned her attention to the battlefield unfolding below. The fleet was ready. It was time for the Deathworlders to fulfill their mission. The ground forces, led by General Valeria Cortez, were already preparing for the assault. Cortez was one of the most ruthless combat commanders humanity had ever produced, a woman who had fought in Earth's deadliest environments, where survival was a daily battle. She had earned the respect of her troops by leading from the front, and she would do so again. Her forces, made up of the finest soldiers humanity had to offer, had been training for this moment for weeks. The Korrakh had no idea what they were about to face. As the dropships prepared to launch, the ground forces made their final checks. Soldiers adjusted their combat gear, double-checked their weapons, and locked in their mission parameters. The Xathar had already done all they could, but the Deathworlders would be the ones to finish the job. Cortez stood in front of her unit, a group of the toughest soldiers the galaxy had ever seen, and addressed them with her characteristic intensity. "Listen up," she began, her voice a low growl. "We're not here to make friends. We're here to send a message. The Korrakh think they can invade, that they can take whatever they want. Well, we're going to show them what happens when they mess with humanity. We don't back down. We don't surrender. We end this war today. You do your job. And we'll show the galaxy what happens when Deathworlders fight." The soldiers stood at attention, their faces hard, their resolve unshakable. There was no fear in them, only the bloodlust of battle, the drive to protect the helpless and crush their enemies. They had trained for this, bled for this, and now they would be the ones to deliver humanity's vengeance. As the dropships launched, tearing through the atmosphere toward Xathar Prime's surface, Cortez's voice came over the comms. "This is our home now. Take no prisoners. This ends today." The ships broke through the clouds, and the battlefield below unfolded like a horrific canvas of war. The Korrakh forces, unaware of the incoming assault, continued to fortify their positions, their massive war machines clanking and thundering across the broken terrain. But as soon as the Deathworlder soldiers touched down, the Korrakh forces were caught off guard. It was like a wildfire. The Deathworlders stormed through the Korrakh lines, tearing into them with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the enemy's ranks. The Korrakh, though strong and terrifying, had never encountered a force like this. Humanity's soldiers didn't fight like anyone else. They were relentless, their tactics brutal, every movement calculated to dismantle the Korrakh war machine piece by piece. The first Korrakh platoons were decimated in seconds as Deathworlder forces flooded the streets, cutting through their armor like a hot knife through butter. The Korrakh didn't retreat. They couldn't. But they were losing, and with every battle fought, the Xathar's world became a little safer. From the skies, the Iron Tempest unleashed its fury, its massive cannons raking across the battlefield, taking out Korrakh artillery positions with precision. The heavy fire from the fleet above ensured that the Deathworlder forces below had a clear path to victory. It was clear now that the Deathworlders were not only saving Xathar Prime, they were rewriting the rules of war. The Korrakh might have been strong, but they had underestimated the sheer will of humanity's finest warriors. As the battle raged on across Xathar Prime, the ground forces pressed forward, each victory inching them closer to their ultimate objective, the Korrakh Command Center, where the leadership of the invaders resided. General Valeria Cortez had been relentless, coordinating her troops with the precision of a master strategist. Every battle, every skirmish was designed to wear down the enemy's resolve, to break their spirit before they could regroup. The Korrakh had made a grave mistake in underestimating the Deathworlders. They had expected a fight, but what they had encountered was a storm of fury, an unstoppable tide of soldiers forged by a brutal planet and tempered in the fires of countless wars. Cortez was in the thick of it. Her boots crunched through the broken earth as she led her forces into the heart of Korrakh territory. The towering insectoid enemies, with their grotesque exoskeletons and razor-sharp claws, fought savagely, but they were not prepared for humanity's savagery. The Deathworlders moved with a deadly efficiency, using the terrain to their advantage, picking off Korrakh snipers, cutting down their war machines, and overrunning their positions with brutal force. It was a testament to the human spirit that in the chaos of battle, the soldiers never faltered, never hesitated. They had one goal: to end the Korrakh threat, and they would stop at nothing to see it through. "Keep pushing forward," Cortez's voice crackled through the comms as she rallied her troops. "The command center is within reach. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't give them a chance to regroup. They're breaking." And break they did. The Korrakh forces were buckling under the pressure. They had underestimated the resolve of humanity, and now they were paying the price. The Deathworlders had turned the tide of the war, and the Korrakh were scattered, their once dominant presence on Xathar Prime reduced to chaos. With every step forward, the Korrakh's defenses crumbled. Their war machines, once so fearsome, lay in ruins, their infantry fleeing or fighting a desperate, losing battle. It was at this moment that Ivanova, aboard the Iron Tempest, received the call from Cortez. "Admiral, we're closing in on the Korrakh leadership. We've broken their lines, and it's just a matter of time before we hit their command center. I need your support. We can't let them regroup." Ivanova's mind raced. The Deathworlders had done their part on the ground, but it would take more than just their fierce warriors to end this. The Korrakh leadership had to be obliterated, and the only way to ensure that was with overwhelming firepower. She turned to her fleet commanders and issued the order. "Target the Korrakh command center, no mercy." Above, the fleet's weapons systems came to life. The Iron Tempest and its sister ships unleashed their fury upon the Korrakh stronghold. The city, once a gleaming example of the Korrakh's dominance, was now the target of humanity's might. Massive railgun rounds rained down, tearing apart buildings, cratering the ground, and creating massive shockwaves that rocked the planet. The Korrakh had no choice but to scatter, their leadership caught in the crossfire. The bombardment continued, relentless. A message sent not just to the Korrakh, but to the entire galaxy. On the ground, Cortez and her forces were closing in on the Korrakh command building. It was a towering structure, a fortress designed to withstand anything, but it had not accounted for the relentless will of humanity. Cortez's soldiers stormed the building's entrance, clearing room after room with ruthless efficiency. The Korrakh, despite their formidable size and strength, were no match for the training, tactics, and sheer ferocity of the Deathworlders. The soldiers moved as one, working together like a well-oiled machine, each blow landing with purpose, each strike a death sentence for their enemies. Finally, Cortez stood before the Korrakh leadership, a group of towering figures huddled together, desperate and cornered. Their grotesque forms shook as they realized the end was near, but there was no mercy in Cortez's eyes. The Korrakh had brought this upon themselves, and humanity was here to ensure they would never again threaten another peaceful world. With a swift motion, Cortez gave the order: "End this." The Deathworlder soldiers moved in, silencing the Korrakh leadership in a brutal display of humanity's resolve. The mission was complete. The Korrakh had been crushed, their command center obliterated, their leadership annihilated. As the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, the Xathar slowly emerged from the shadows, their faces filled with a mix of awe and gratitude. They had witnessed the raw might of humanity, the sheer force of will that had driven the Deathworlders to save their world. The Korrakh were no more, their threat eradicated. Xathar Prime, though scarred, was free. General Cortez stood atop the ruins of the Korrakh command center, her eyes scanning the horizon. The battle had been won, but humanity's message had been sent across the stars. They had delivered, and the galaxy would never forget the power of the Deathworlders. As the last echoes of the battle faded, the landscape of Xathar Prime lay in ruins. The Korrakh had been defeated, but the victory came at a high cost. The surface of the planet was scarred, with massive craters where Korrakh fortifications had once stood and cities reduced to rubble. Despite this, there was a sense of quiet triumph in the air. The Xathar, a species on the brink of extinction, had been saved, and the Deathworlder Fleet had proven once again that humanity's capacity for survival and domination in the harshest environments was unparalleled. Admiral Ivanova stood on the command deck of the Iron Tempest, watching as the last of the Korrakh ships were pulled from orbit. The mission had been a success, but there was no celebration. The cost of the battle was etched into her mind, and the faces of the fallen soldiers, both Xathar and human, remained in her thoughts. She knew that this victory wasn't the end, it was only a chapter in a much larger story. General Cortez, her face smeared with dirt and blood, stood at Ivanova's side. The two women had worked together for years, and while they were no strangers to the horrors of war, they had never been numb to the loss. Cortez turned to Ivanova, her eyes burning with a mix of fatigue and resolve. "We did it. But I can't help but feel like this is just the beginning. The Korrakh will come back, or someone else will take their place. This galaxy isn't kind to those who fight for survival." Ivanova nodded, understanding the weight of Cortez's words. The galaxy was a harsh place, a place where power ruled above all else. While humanity had proven their strength today, they had made powerful enemies. The Korrakh might have been vanquished, but others would rise in their place. The Deathworlder Fleet had achieved its mission, but the price of peace was never static. It always came with new challenges. Perhaps Ivanova replied, her voice low. "But today we've shown the galaxy that we're not just players in this game, we're the ones who make the rules. They'll know our names, and they'll know not to mess with humanity." The weight of that truth settled between them like a solid stone. Humanity's reputation had changed overnight. The Korrakh were not the only threat the galaxy faced, but their defeat was a powerful message. The Deathworlders had shown that when humanity was pushed to the edge, they fought back not with hesitation, but with a ferocity that would leave even the greatest of foes trembling. As the fleet began its journey back to Earth, the Xathar leaders, grateful but humble, made their way to the Iron Tempest to offer their thanks. The Xathar had seen what humans were capable of, and their appreciation was sincere. But the exchange was not without its complexities. The Xathar, though free from the Korrakh, were still rebuilding their world, and their future was uncertain. They had a debt to humanity now, one that would not be easily forgotten. The leaders of the two species stood in the midst of the wreckage of the Korrakh's invasion, exchanging words that would shape the future of their worlds. "Humanity saved us," one of the Xathar leaders said, his voice thick with emotion. "But there is still so much we need to rebuild. Our people are broken, scattered. We are grateful, but we do not know how to repay you for what you've done." Ivanova, ever the diplomat despite her military role, nodded solemnly. "You don't have to repay us. We're not here for that. We're here because we believe in survival, and in protecting those who have no other choice but to fight for their existence. Your struggle is our struggle now." Those words resonated deeply with the Xathar. The galaxy had been a place of constant conflict, where only the strongest survived. But humanity had given them a glimpse of something different, of allies who fought not for conquest, but for the preservation of life. As the fleet made its final preparations to leave orbit, the Xathar gathered in their broken cities to begin the hard work of rebuilding. They would never forget the price of their freedom, nor the sacrifices made by the humans who had come to their aid. There would be no quick fix, no easy recovery, but the Xathar had a new sense of purpose. They had survived. Back aboard the Iron Tempest, the crew stood at attention as Admiral Ivanova issued the final orders for departure. The fleet had done its job. The Korrakh were no more, and the galaxy had been reminded that humanity was a force that should never be underestimated. Yet Ivanova's mind lingered on the future, on the uncertain road ahead. There would always be new threats, new battles. The victory on Xathar Prime had been a turning point, but it was far from the end. Humanity's place in the galaxy had just been secured, but the true test of their legacy had only just begun, and the Deathworlders, hardened by their battles and guided by an unbreakable will, would be ready for whatever came next. As the Deathworlder Fleet left the atmosphere of Xathar Prime, the weight of their triumph lingered in the cold expanse of space. The fleet's ships, their hulls scarred and marked by the relentless battle, drifted into formation, a silent reminder of the war that had just ended. There were no celebrations, no cheers. The crew knew that the victory, though significant, was just another chapter in the unending saga of survival. Humanity had once again proven its place in the universe, but they had also learned a harsh truth: peace was fleeting, and the galaxy's dark corners would always breed new threats. Admiral Ivanova sat alone in her quarters, her mind heavy with the burden of leadership. She had commanded the fleet through the fiercest of battles, led her soldiers into the heart of the Korrakh stronghold, and brought them back victorious. But now, with the mission accomplished, she couldn't shake the sense of unease that gnawed at her. The Korrakh were defeated, yes, but the universe was vast, and its dangers were infinite. Humanity had made its mark, but how long would that mark hold? How long before the next threat came knocking at their door? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. It was a message from General Cortez, who had been coordinating the post-battle efforts with the surviving Xathar forces. The general's voice crackled through the comms as soon as the message connected. "Admiral, we've secured the planet's surface. The Xathar are grateful, but they're in no position to stand on their own just yet. They need our help, and I believe we should stay. At least long enough to ensure they're on the right path to rebuilding." Ivanova rubbed her temples, the weight of Cortez's words sinking in. She had known this would be part of the cost of victory. Xathar Prime had been saved, but it was a fragile victory. The planet was a shell of its former self, its cities in ruins, its people scattered and broken. As much as the Xathar owed humanity, the Deathworlder Fleet was not a charity. Their resources were finite, and their soldiers were weary. But the thought of leaving them alone to rebuild, to face the aftermath of a war they had not started, stirred something deep within her. Humanity had always been more than just conquerors. They were protectors, survivors, and sometimes that meant extending a hand to those in need. "I'll be there in a moment," General Ivanova replied, her voice steady. "Prepare a briefing with the Xathar leadership. I'll join you on the surface." As she ended the transmission, she stood and gazed out the viewport of her quarters. The stars stretched infinitely before her, a reminder of how small they all were in the grand design of the universe. But in that moment, she found something that kept her grounded. Humanity was small, yes, but they were powerful. They had proven that they could survive, that they could fight, and that they could win. They had shown the galaxy that their will was unbreakable. The next few days were a blur of meetings, coordination, and rebuilding efforts. Cortez led the charge on the ground, working closely with the Xathar to help them organize their resources and begin the arduous task of restoring their world. Ivanova, for her part, worked tirelessly with the fleet, ensuring that the Deathworlders' presence on the planet didn't overstay its welcome. They had done their part, but there was no place for them to stay forever. Humanity's mission was not to occupy, but to help, to give the Xathar the chance to rebuild, and then allow them to stand on their own. As time passed, the Xathar began to show signs of recovery. Their leadership, once shattered and disorganized, began to take shape. With the guidance of the Deathworlders, they started to rebuild their cities, repair their infrastructure, and re-establish their place in the galaxy. They had a long road ahead, but they were no longer fighting for survival. They had been given a second chance, and they were determined to make the most of it. One evening, as Ivanova stood on the bridge of the Iron Tempest, watching the first signs of recovery on the planet below, she received a message from the Xathar leadership. They wanted to thank humanity for everything they had done. But as Ivanova listened to their words of gratitude, she knew that it wasn't just a victory for the Xathar. It was a victory for humanity as well. They had proven their worth, their strength, and their resolve. They had shown the galaxy that when humanity fought, it fought to protect, to defend, and to survive. As the fleet prepared to depart from Xathar Prime, Ivanova gathered her crew. They had done what they had set out to do. They had saved a world, defeated a ruthless enemy, and shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be trifled with. But as the stars stretched before them once more, Ivanova knew that this was only the beginning. There would be other battles, other wars, other races to defend or destroy. But the Deathworlder Fleet would always stand ready, ready to fight, ready to protect, and ready to show the galaxy that humanity would never be forgotten. "Prepare for departure," she ordered, her voice resolute. "Let's head home. Our work is never done." Dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed this story of humanity's courage and strength. If you liked it, please consider supporting my YouTube channel for for more amazing content and exciting stories. Your subscriptions and appreciation would mean the world to me as I work hard to bring you more in the future. Thank you for your support.